We wanted to have nutrition consultant Josee Bosgra back with us to talk about the numerous physical and mental benefits attributed to eating well. Now, in our last talk with Josee, we discussed a variety of topics, but today we want to take a deep dive into the various body systems that benefit from eating clean and healthy. Josee, welcome back to Bridge City News.
Thanks so much for having me.
It's great to have you here. Josee, would you say that our food and lifestyle will affect every part of our life, from having migraines, food cravings, and maybe fertility and gut health as well?
Absolutely, I would. Food and lifestyle both are very, very important when we talk about exercise and rest and all that. My scope is food, and I would absolutely say that food, either what we're eating that isn't working for us or what we're not eating that we're lacking, will affect pretty much every part of us, every cell of our body, and come out in some sort of adverse feeling.
So I was going to ask you to give us some examples of food that might be affecting or causing migraines, for example. But I wanted to give an example from my younger days. I would eat a lot of alfalfa sprouts and I started getting migraine headaches, which was really unusual for me. I cut out the alfalfa sprouts, migraines went away. Can you talk about this relationship?
Absolutely. I think it's super just important to start with every body is different. So while one person might do fine with, say, alfalfa sprouts and consider it a healthy thing for them, someone else might not. An interesting thing would be blood type. Blood type actually plays a factor in kind of what foods jive with you and what don't. So we could talk more about that, but essentially, like, say type O's, they do best with meat, they do best with red meat, they do not do well with like legumes and grains and stuff. So if a type O tried to be a vegetarian and they start getting a bunch of migraines because they're eating all these things that don't jive with their blood type, then that would be an example of how then you see a type A person who would thrive on those foods, and these two people are eating the exact same thing. One person's getting migraines, one person's not. So that would be one thing. Secondly, too much of anything is not ideal and can cause some sort of response like a migraine. So, like in your example, we don't know. Maybe your body didn't jive with alfalfa sprouts, but maybe you just ate too much, and so that's something to consider. For example, coffee. Coffee in itself, I think it has a bit of a bad rap for, say, causing headaches or energy crashes. And while that's true, I think that's largely due to the overconsumption and reliance on it in our part of the world today.
Yeah, definitely a lot of jumping off points. We'll get into the blood types and all of that stuff in a few minutes just to tease that. But when we consider how our bodies are designed, they're designed for food and maybe not the chemicals we see in modern foods. I know when everyone goes to the grocery store, we see so much food in boxes and bags. Can you talk maybe a little bit about how these modern foods have a negative impact on our bodies?
Absolutely. I think in part it's due to what you touched on with added chemicals and their byproducts, things that we weren't naturally designed to consume. The other thing I would say is we weren't really designed to eat food out of boxes and microwaves and all that jazz. So I think there's something to be said for whole foods and eating foods in their most natural form as possible. And then there's something to be said for these modern foods you're talking about, packaged, processed foods. And in small amounts, I think it's okay to some degree. Our bodies were designed with a detoxification system with your liver, which performs a ridiculous amount of functions per day to help you clear these things out. The problem is when we overconsume these things, when we're having boxed foods, canned foods, microwave meals every day. Yeah, so I think the problem is that we're ingesting way more of this than we were designed to.
So our bodies, I think we would both agree that our bodies is made to heal itself, but it also communicates with us. So somebody might be getting inflammation. Maybe they've noticed that their fingernails are a little more brittle than normal or that they used to be. Can you talk about those indicators that our body is trying to tell us something with?
Absolutely, whether it's fingernails or hair or skin, or lots of other things we could talk about. Those are the top three that came to my head. But these are very like tangible markers if you let them be. I think lots of people don't. They don't have the awareness to say, my nails are more brittle than they were last year. What's going on? So in that case, like it could be actually connected to your hair too. Like if you're depleted in minerals, for example, that can change things. If you're not taking in adequate protein, every cell needs protein to do its job. So that would be one reason. Your fingernails, in particular, if you got a white spot in the middle, that can indicate zinc deficiency. And as I said, if we can develop and cultivate an awareness of our bodies and changes in our bodies, we can catch things earlier. So, zinc deficiency, if I see someone coming in with nails like that, we get them on a zinc supplement. We talk about zinc rich foods, incorporating those, and then we can kind of bite it in the butt before it gets to a place where it's a lot more difficult to pull yourself out of a deep deficiency.
Right. And just as the Bible says, our bodies are fearfully and wonderfully made. Getting to the blood types that we talked about, one of the things that I know that you do is the live blood analysis. Can you talk a little bit about what that is and what its purpose is?
Absolutely. Yep. This right here is my handy dandy microscope. You can just see the tip of it. And so when people come to see me, we take a prick of blood from their finger and we grab it onto a slide without destroying any integrity of the cells. So we actually see their cells on the computer screen as if they were moving around in the body. That can tell us so much based on the shape, based on how they're interacting with each other, based on what's happening in the background between the cells. We can see deficiencies. We can see, say, zinc deficiency, B12, iron deficiency. We can see chemical toxicity, adrenal stress. We can see different white blood cells that might indicate, say, like a food allergy or parasite infection. Can see if your liver's stressed. We can see how you're digesting fats and proteins. There is so much more I could say, but it really is a deep dive into like how is your body doing on a cellular level. And I just love that we have this technology to do that. And typically, when people come in for the first time, they're also in awe of those are my blood cells. Wow, and what does that mean? What is that doing? And we get to talk through kind of all those things and deviations from like maybe what's healthy blood, which I've never seen anyone with like totally healthy blood. Everyone's got something going on, but it's very very fascinating.
It is really interesting. I wanted to just circle back to the blood types for a moment. Can you give us maybe a very brief description of what foods are best for what blood type?
Absolutely, yep. So type A's are the best kind of candidate to be vegetarian. Not to say that they all need to be, but if you're going to choose to eat meat, these people have lower stomach acid, so they probably need a bit of help digesting their meats. So like a digestive enzyme with meat heavy meals would be really helpful for them. Type B's and AB's tend to do best with seafood. There's a bit more detail I could get into with those specifics, but essentially they can do meat. It's not like ideal to have a lot of red meat for them. Seafood is ideal. Eggs are good. And then the type O's are kind of the meat lovers, high protein meats, and they don't do well with legumes or grains or dairy.
Well, that's very interesting. And who would have thought that your blood type can tell you how to interact with your diet and have a little more success with that? So, could you describe maybe foods that just with a broad spectrum could impact one's metabolism in a positive way?
Yeah, I think protein is probably the most important for positive impact, and then also just being aware of the things that are negatively impacting and trying to mitigate those a little bit, like saturated fats, excess carbs, and just processed foods would definitely affect the metabolism. So kind of whole foods in general, whether it's a protein source, a carb source, a fat source, they're all gonna help your metabolism. We need all those things. Some people, I mean, I know, like for example, keto is kind of all the rage, and that works for some people, like especially men. I would say that would be a good way to kind of reset your metabolism. I'm not a huge fan of it for women, especially long term, just because we need carbs for your cycle and your hormones, and it really has some detrimental effects when they don't do that. But I would say focusing on protein, whether you're going to do keto or not, is a really good way to kind of, I don't know, be mindful of your metabolism. Hopefully, positively affect it, like you said.
That makes sense. So, are there foods that maybe would slow our metabolism down? And would you have with this kind of foods that we could avoid?
Yeah, yeah, I think I touched on it a little bit. So, like, kind of bad fats. We really want good fats, olives, nuts, seeds, avocados, coconuts. But the fats like potato chips, fried foods, all that kind of junk will definitely affect your metabolism for the worse. And then processed foods as well, like a lot of those box things. It's just, yeah, not quite as easy for your body to metabolize and use as energy. It's not a quality energy source, so you wouldn't feel positive effects from those things for sure.
Right, that makes sense. I know some of my friends are on the carnivore diet now. I guess maybe that is an amped up version of keto. But let's switch gears a little bit to gut health. Can you give us a short description of what gut health means?
Wow, yeah. Well, gut health means essentially what it sounds like, having a healthy gut. Now, I think we want flourishing bacteria. That's kind of in essence, what we talk about with gut health is your bacteria in balance. So everyone has bacteria. It's not bad. We have good bacteria that are working for us. It's more a matter of balance. So I think with these things we talked about in terms of diet, that can really affect the balance of bacteria in your gut. So when you have the bad bacteria kind of elevated and the good bacteria lowered, your gut health, like your digestion is off. That can affect your skin, your mental health, your energy, your sleep. And so that would be good. A marker of that is healthy poops. So that's kind of something that I like to work on with clients. Is like I always say, it's not weird to talk about poop. That's kind of what we do here. How are you pooping? And we want to get people eliminating properly multiple times per day, and that's a good marker for gut health.
Yes, that is excellent. And I realize that, it can be, someone might be surprised to hear that, but definitely color and shape and amount during the day they're such important indicators for us. Are there foods that you would recommend for improving and maybe maintaining one's gut health?
Yeah. Again, to that everybody's different. So that's where the live blood cell analysis comes really handy, because you see these programs online that are like, here's a gut health program, eat these, don't eat these. And it might not work for everyone. And so I think it's very individualized, but there are some basic guidelines like anyone could probably merit from implementing. First, I would just eliminate things that are harming. So that would be highly inflammatory foods, usually like corn, soy, conventional dairy. If you can get your hands on some raw dairy, if you don't live in Canada, then that's cool, but we can't really get that here. Gluten is one for people, and again, kind of in this part of the world, I think it has a lot more to do with how it's being produced, grain products, for example. But for most people, they would benefit from eliminating gluten, dairy, corn, soy, some people eggs for a little while, even to reset your gut so that it's not in a hyper inflamed state. Including foods like you mentioned, I would say lots of fermented foods, sauerkraut, kimchi, miso would be kind of my one exception to soy. That type of thing, sourdough, like if you're doing gluten, or you could do gluten-free sourdough. And then bone broth, we talked about last time, is incredibly healing for your gut. Actually helps to repair any like minor kind of holes in your gut. So that's really, really helpful in gut healing. And then again, just fresh fruits and vegetables, they can go a long way.
So, in thinking of our bodies, there is that body mind connection. Do you think there's a spiritual side to connecting with our health?
Absolutely. I really don't think that you can even separate them. I'm thinking of this meme I saw on Instagram, which was like best Christian memes or something. It's just silly, and it was like this. this youth group like saying God bless this meal and make it nourishing to our bodies, and it's like a Big Mac and fries. And I find it quite funny because in some ways I think that's kind of true in two ways, I guess. Number one, we do eat a lot of crap, and then we tend to ask God to bless it. And I don't know that that's always like wise. But then the other side is like sometimes you're in a situation where you have to eat something unideal, whether it's out of courtesy for being hosted or you're traveling or whatnot. And we really can trust that like there's a spiritual side to it. And so we could pray that it will be nourishing to our bodies, and you might find that it doesn't affect you in the same way as if you didn't. So I definitely do think there is, and maybe not only like a spiritual connection to God in that way, but also there's a connection. I wouldn't maybe say it's spiritual, but to like farmers that produced your food. So often, like before a meal, we'll say grace and we'll thank God for all the people that were involved in getting this meal on our plate, from the grocery store to the farmers market to the farmers. So yeah, anyway, I think it's really impossible to separate.
Amen to that. Josee, how can our viewers get in touch with you for more information?
Yeah, so you could visit my website. It's rootsandfruitswellness.com. I'm on social media, Instagram and Facebook. You can email me. All that info would be on all three of those places.
That's great. Nutrition consultant Josee Bosgra, thank you so much for joining us today from your office in Lethbridge.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks. And for all of us here at Bridge City News, I'm Michael Clausen. Thanks for watching.